And again, thank you for tuning in. Now, you must stay on and listen, pay attention, because if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, and you are not attracting the type of clients you really want to attract, got to listen to this guy, Dave Polykoff. Dave, listen, thank you and welcome to the Business and Wealth Show.
Mac, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, today's gonna be a good conversation. Coming back from an agency, a coaching, a consultant background myself, a lot of lessons learned along the way. I'd love to share with you guys today.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. And those who don't know Dave, he's a co-founder and CEO of Zenpost, a personal brand and content strategy agency that helps coaches and consultants attract, convince, and convert. Most importantly, convert their ideal clients online through an industry-leading personal brand. So we're going to learn more about that and much, much, much more. So Dave, tell us about your entrepreneurial journey. How did you start? Was it an easy start? What were some big lessons for it?
Sure. So I'll start with this. I've never had a traditional W-2 job. Back in college, I got an internship. That internship, I was employee number three at the time. It was this online reputation management company, which I'm sure some of us are familiar with. But if you're not, essentially, if bad things are showing up on your Google search results, we hope that go away. And so that was a very popular thing. It still is. It's necessary to control your online presence. And that's really where I learned the value of controlling how your online presence looked because we saw just how damaging it can be to have bad search results or just bad information about you online, what that can do for your business. We can also see how it can impact your business in a positive way when you start taking control. And I was employee number three. Over the next year, we went to 103 employees. It was just booming. This was based in Philadelphia, PA, where I'm based right now. And I will say this is timely because my Eagles are in the Super Bowl coming up. So
They
hopefully,
are. They are.
yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully we this is I have something to celebrate in a couple weeks. So yeah, we were a vastly growing company. I was just coming out of college, so I'm like a kid learning all of this experience over the next couple of years. I say I went to school for marketing and advertising, but I got my degree on the streets, like being in the business, doing the work,
Hmm.
figuring it out on the fly. We're a young, scrappy company, so I'm wearing every different hat every day.
Right.
And yeah, we started to really grow. But the clientele that we had for that business, as you can imagine, in some cases were people that were doing some bad things that wanted to, keep
Wow.
that information suppressed. And so when we went to grow and expand and raise money, it was very difficult. So we pivoted our business model a bit, try to get a different type of client in that was a bit more, people doing well-respected brands, doing well-respected things. And what I like to say is we had a plane already in flight that was our cash cow, and we were trying to build another plane separately,
Right.
and we didn't make that transition well. So we went from 103 employees right back down to three employees over the
Ouch.
next year.
Ouch.
And I was there for the entire journey. My main focus at that time was marketing, advertising, and software development. So marketing, software, and tech, and all that was just hand in hand. And yeah, so I just got to witness what it took to build a company, and then
Yeah.
I saw firsthand what can happen when you make the wrong decision and you're too high up in the air, and how that can come down very quickly. So after that, the business owner of that company then spun off the core idea that we were trying to build
Mhm.
later on in that first business, which that first business was called brand.com. So branding is just in my DNA.
Right.
And we spun off into a separate company, and this company was called News Launcher. And this was a time where publishers were going out of business. They couldn't, Twitter was democratizing news, and they needed to pay their authors. They needed to fund themselves somehow.
True.
And so what we were doing was we were working with credible brands to get them placements, article placements on respected publications. And there was an exchange of money in that case. It was called sponsored content. So basically, it's like an ad, but there's an
Mm.
editorial part to it.
Right.
Right? There's an author crafting an engaging piece. The brand pays for it. So during that time, again, saw what it took to start, get funding, launch a company. We invested into software development. I was spearheading that again, but also saw the value in content creation, storytelling, injecting a brand into a story to then drive an action afterwards. Like that's what sponsored content is. Moved to New York for a year, was in and out of the New York Times and the Associated Presses and the Business
Okay.
Insiders of the world.
Yeah.
And again, I'm like 24 maybe at this point. Just I
What a
felt
journey.
imposter syndrome was like not a strong enough word for
Right.
me being in these rooms and I'm just like wearing a suit that's like two sizes too big for me, you know? So but we kind of like faked it till we made it type of thing.
Mm.
And that was a tough time because it was a time where sponsored content was kind of the Wild West. We were trying to trailblaze an industry and it took a while to get product market fit. And I was kind of just like, I kind of just want to. I figured out what this entrepreneurial thing is. I really just kind of want
Okay.
to venture out and be my own boss and do my own thing. And so around 2016 is when I started my first content agency, and yeah, went off and finally got that entrepreneurial itch enough to do my own thing. And from there, my own businesses, a handful of different agencies and such that I've launched since then, which we can get into. But that's kind of how I got started.
Awesome, awesome. So after you quit, so you're in New York and you quit and you started your own agency. What was day one like? What was it day one in your new business? Got to find clients, got to get paid. What was that like?
Yeah, well, I'm living with a couple buddies in South Philly. I'm living in the basement
Wow.
and got to pay rent, got to pay utilities. And so the income from that startup that I was in was no longer. So yeah, it was very much, figure this out. I mean, I remember I woke up one morning and my bank account was overdrawn and I had no credit to help me get this back in the black here. I remember I had to go sell some stuff on like Craigslist, get cash, go to the bank physically and hand them money because it was like, do or die moment.
Wow.
Um, but that was the catalyst, the inspiration for like, all right, you're your own boss now. You got to figure this out. No one's handing you a paycheck. You are your own destiny here. And so at first, I got into content creation. I was acting as a freelance writer, and I had a buddy who I'd worked with at one of my old startups. He was working with this one publication, and he was like, "We need freelance writers. Come write some content for us." I started writing content, and I quickly realized how much I hated writing content for other people.
Hmm.
I didn't like to write the words, but I did like to manage the process of content creation. So I quickly realized that, and I hired a few writers. This guy would feed me article topics. I'd pass it off to actual freelance writers, manage the process, and arbitrage the process. I'd take my cut from the top. That started to get some money through the door, and then I realized, well, if this guy needs content, I'm sure all these other publishers need it too. I knew for a fact because I'd worked with many. And so I started to just get on to publication sites, go to their contact form, find their, contact email, and just send out emails every single day,
All
maybe
right.
20, 30 emails a day to all these publishers I could find, being like, do you need writers? Here's my rates, yada, yada. Threw up a website overnight, and the website was called Presto Media.
Okay.
And that was my first agency. That was formalized it kind of overnight. Again, made myself look bigger than I really was, but I was working out of my basement. And yeah, got a couple really great early clients that needed a ton of content. At the time, I was vastly undercharging for my services, which is
That's when
why
you
they were
start,
like,
right? Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
And so that's how I got my first couple clients. And from there, I brought on my buddy who I was writing for. I was like, yo, this is starting to take off. Do you want to join me? And took on some capital because we wanted to formalize the editorial process
Mm.
by building a platform that managed the whole workflow for us because we were doing it in Google spreadsheets.
Okay.
And yeah, just started to scale it from there.
All right. Congratulations. Well done. There's a saying that necessity is the mother of invention. And when the thing hit the fan and you got to figure it out, you had to get
Yeah.
creative, send out all these emails. And luckily enough, you got two companies that took you on and you're able to do content for them. Now, I want to get into your expertise, which is helping people to build their personal brand online. Tell us, let us know what is a personal brand and why that is important for any entrepreneur, coach, consultant.
Absolutely. So the easiest way to think of a personal brand is just translating your expertise and knowledge into content that other people can consume so that
Mm,
they know, like, trust you and want to opt into inevitably your service. I think what a lot of coaches, consultants, and small agency owners, the typical path for them is they were once a W-2 employee somewhere, or they worked under
W2, we've
someone's.
got people all over the world here. W2 is just
Sure. Okay, sure.
someone who works for someone else and is that right? Or is
Yep.
that
So basically, you're an employee of someone
or
else,
someone else?
right? You're
Yeah,
not your own boss.
got it.
Um, so you worked at another agency, you worked under someone somewhere, essentially. And maybe you've worked there for 5, 10 years, and you've got so much experience. You've been able to pull knowledge from people around you.
Mm,
You worked with clients, but again, through the agency. And so you had the experience of people's wants, needs, desires just through being within that group and that
sure.
service. Eventually, whether you were fired or couldn't take it any like me, I couldn't take it anymore to not be my own boss,
Uh,
you there was some sort of catalyst that separated you from being an employee and you took the entrepreneurial leap into being a coach, consultant, or just started your own agency. And the problem many people face is that they're really good at the service part of it. They've been doing the service part of it for so long, but actually acquiring new clients was always someone else's job. There was always a
right.
sales department, a marketing department that brought them clients.
That's right.
And so they get into their business, and early on, maybe a few friends, family, colleagues are their clients, or they refer clients. And so they get a few happy clients, and then those happy clients refer a few more happy clients. And so they're over time, their business is just strictly reliant on referrals.
Mhm.
And they never really publicize what they're doing because they never had to. It was always just kind of like, well, new clients just keep coming in from other clients. That's good enough. But a couple of years into their business, they realize, oh, wait, this whole referral system, I can't fully rely on that. That's inconsistent. Money's not coming in as regularly as I like. Now I'm starting to have a family, et cetera, et cetera. So personal branding is basically the ability to replicate the referral process. A referral comes to you because that one person is saying, hey, trust this person. They're very credible.
Mm,
Here's what they did for me, yada, yada. Basically, what you're doing with personal branding is taking that same concept and translating it into a marketing machine that does that for you while you sleep. It's your ultimate referral system. So you do that through a handful of ways, which we can get into, but that's generally what personal branding actually is.
fantastic. Thanks for that. And one of the things you talk about is the personal brand blueprint. What
Mhm.
is that? And what's the framework of that?
Yeah. So there's three pillars to that. One of which is branding or positioning. And there's some core elements to this, which is your origin story. So if
Mm,
you're a coach, consultant, agency owner, that story I just mentioned about how you were working at some other agency or whatnot, and then you ventured into your own gig and you were trying to figure things out and you had all these experiences and then you figured out the solution of how to do it. That's your origin story. And
yeah.
that's everyone has their own unique one that they need to share. It helps you become credible. The other thing is your unique methods. What are the things that you do that differentiate you from the competition so that when people go to look into your service, You don't just look like another Me Too product that they've seen 1,000 times. Oh, this is a solution I haven't heard about before. They're trying something different here. So that's branding and positioning. There's a bunch of other things, but second is your sales funnel. So you need that lead magnet to attract people, and then you need to be able to bring them into a nurturing funnel. And
Mhm.
that's typically longer form content. That could be things like a video sales letter, which is tells your story, tells your credibility, tells your unique methods, and then says, if this is what you think is going to help you survive and thrive, then opt into a call and let's chat. So that's a sales funnel. And then lastly is you need to drive traffic to that sales funnel. And
Right.
again, that's long form content. And so what I like to preach is guest podcasting is a great way to do that, right?
Mhm.
Get into other people's audiences, show your story, show your unique methods, and then give a call to action at the end, exactly like we're doing here today. Additionally, then lastly is long form content on YouTube. Create your own podcast, create your own YouTube channel, demonstrate your knowledge that way. And it also can use as sales collateral. If people come to you with objections, you send them a video, watch this, and then people are again pre-selling themselves on what you have to offer. So by the time they get into your sales funnel, they're ready to book that call and they're ready to buy.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that because the whole concept is they've come into once they've gone through all that nurturing, they at some point they've made up their mind they're going to buy from you. Now the question is money and time or any other objections. And it reminds me
Mhm.
of Robert Cialdini's book. I think it's Robert Down. Yeah, Persuasion.
Yeah.
Persuasion. Big book. Great
Hmm.
book. Highly recommend. I think it's got it. Oh,
Yep.
just right there. Just right there.
Pre-suade, pre-sell. Yeah.
Persuade. Yeah, it
That's
works
what you're
very
doing.
well. So the tell me, so we've got these small businesses online or listening, watching, coaches and consultants as well. Nowadays, people are told, and depending on which guru you're listening to, create content, create this, create this, create this. And I suppose it can be quite overwhelming for many small business owners, especially if they don't have a large team. So how can how do you teach people, or what do you show them in order to be able to create good quality content without going crazy?
Yeah. So creator burnout is a real thing. I
Mm,
went through it myself. And largely, people are not creating content, one, because they have a imposter syndrome or a fear of the camera. So there's just kind of like limiting beliefs. Or two, they're okay with that, but there's no strategy or system in place to be able to understand what to create and how to create it. And
mm,
so putting the imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs behind, let's just all say we're all in on content. Those are the two things we need to focus on is understanding what you should be talking about and then the system in place to be able to easily create that content on a consistent basis.
okay.
So first and foremost, what to actually create your content around. That's where you're going to start at your offer and your unique methods. The whole point of content is to lead people to persuade people into understanding and believing that what you have to offer is going to help them, right? So that's
Mhm.
your North Star. Then
Yeah.
you kind of work yourself backwards from there. And so that's broken up into different pillars. People talk about content pillars, but what I like to refer to them as is different categories of content that touch on different elements of why someone needs to know, like, and trust you before they can opt in. And those are things like your background story, um, addressing limiting beliefs that your ideal client has, addressing objections that they might have, um, demonstrating the unique methods that you have, or talking about unique resources that you use within your service, case studies. There's about 9 or 10 categories that I have that you want to touch on all of these. And you're pretty much creating a you can do a short form video or a long form video on each of these categories every month. And that ends up being your monthly content, essentially. And from that main pillar post, you can repurpose. We've heard about content repurposing. You take that main topic and you split it into a carousel or a tweet and all that kind of stuff. But you want to start with the main topic every month. And so that helps just kind of like define what am I talking about. You start with the objection, the goal of I want to bring people into my offer, and then you touch on all 10 of those categories in content, and then deliver that over a month. Now, the actual process of that, typically what we like to call is content batching. Choose one day per month, bang out all of those topics in a day, and then you have your entire batch of content for the following month. Some people like to do that themselves. Other people would rather pay someone to do that. And pretty much what I described is what Zenpost does for coaches,
Right.
consultants, and agency owners. So we do the done for you part of that. But the process itself is something that anyone can really do on their own.
Awesome. So the idea is create content, valuable content that your prospects may find of value or need. And then as they come in, nurture them through the sequence that you have. And eventually at some point they buy from you. That's why we want to create content, right?
Yeah, so content is just the beginning, though.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're going to post content that equals sales.
Mm.
Content, specifically short form content on social, allows people to discover you and then go, let me check this person out.
Yeah, so
That's
that's what I'm
that's
saying.
that's the
It's more of an
boundaries of
aware,
short form.
yeah, so
Yeah,
more of an
awareness.
awareness campaign. All right, good.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you're giving us a strategy in terms of, like you said, take a day out, um, do a whole batch, and then you really got enough content for the month. Now, for those who have that imposter syndrome, or look, I don't even know where to start. I don't even want to hold my camera and speak. Do you have a whole process for them to say, "Hey, okay, look, when you take that day out, you're going to do it yourself. Do this, do this, do this." If your agency is helping them, do you have a process for them to, or how do you get them to decide what short form and long form to do? Is that based on their personality, their subject matter, what their product is?
Yeah, so the strategy behind what they're going to talk about in their short form, it goes, well, first and foremost is we start with that blueprint that I talked about. So
Mm,
that's
mm,
we help them craft the brand and positioning. We help them craft that origin story. We help them identify their unique methods.
yeah.
We hyper focus on who their ideal client is and what their dreams and desires are. So we need that mapped out and on paper in front of us. And then we work backwards from there. And we implement those 10 categories that I talked about, where we're now addressing each of those things for each of those categories. And so every month, what we do is we prepare a document that has those 10 categories.
Okay.
And then next to that, we create the topic that we want to associate with that category based on clients' needs, dreams, fears, desires, based on our clients' unique methods, based on objections that our clients typically have, all that kind of stuff. So we prepare that for them. And then we even go as far as to create, a potential hook that they can use to
Mm,
start the video off. But the important thing is we don't script anything for them. We give them guidance into like how to get like a really punchy, great video.
yeah.
But we want it to be our client's natural voice and off of out of their minds. That's very important. No like chat GPT type stuff. And if you're feeling imposter syndrome, again, this goes back to what I find is if it's not going to be through me or Zenpost, do this yourself as a practice, but really reflect on what your origin story has been. How have you gotten to where you are today? What
Mm,
lessons have you learned? Be okay with talking about the losses that you had, but what were the lessons that you learned from it? And how did you become the hero after that? Find times that you've just really failed and then created a way out of that hole and and then reflect on where you are today. If you really go through that entire process, you will stand with your chest out and realize, you know what, I deserve to be here. I deserve to express my knowledge. And it's not a magic pill, but it certainly is going to help you get through some of that imposter syndrome where you say like, no, I do have a story to tell. I do have something unique that I should be sharing. And if you still have imposter syndrome at that point, then it's not because you don't feel as though you have something of value to say. It's probably something else. And that is unfortunately something a therapist needs to
Yeah,
talk to you about.
absolutely. What you're saying about origin story is actually it's very important, and because every single person has their own unique experience, background, challenges, how they turn things around. And certainly, the work I do internationally, training and coaching hundreds of thousands of people in over 50 countries now, there was a time when I had to start telling that story more and more, and which was about, being in debt over $100,000 and struggling, business not working, and can't take care of my family. Got my wife's pregnant with our second child, and I'm hardly at home working 18, 19 hours a day. How did I turn that around and fix the business, then sell the business, and then start investing in other businesses? That story is so important. And I found that working with clients all over the world is this: if that self-limiting belief is there, or that imposter syndrome is there, speak to someone else. Speak to someone else. It could be a friend, it could be a buddy, someone you trust. Get a coach, get a mentor, and say, look, I've got to create my origin story, and let them help you to bring it out of you, because we live in a society where everyone wants to be seen as perfect. And I say, don't do that. Just be seen as authentic. Just be
Mhm.
seen as authentic and real. And if this has happened, that's the truth. And
Yeah.
there are people who would resonate to that story more than my story or more than Dave's story. And they'll resonate, they'll be attracted to you. So be real. So great point there. Well made, Dave. I really
Yeah.
appreciate
And to that point, two notes on that. One is I love the concept of an origin story because in the world of our superhero movies that are going on right now, the origin story of how a hero became a hero, like we love that stuff, right? Like we cling to that. We like to put ourselves in the shoes of the hero before they got their powers and then,
Yes.
the rise to heroism. That's kind of what we're claiming here. But also to your point about making sure we're also expressing the losses that we've had, as I mentioned, we need to, as the audience, need to put ourselves in the shoes of the hero when they were at their lowest. We need to say,
Mm,
"Oh, I am that person. Oh,
mm,
I have been $100,000 in debt. Oh, I have been fired from that job.
mm.
Oh, I had family issues while I'm trying to build my empire." That people need to be able to relate to it, to go, "This person went through what I'm currently going through right now, and they
Right.
made it out the other side of success. I need to see how they did it, and that how they did it is your unique method. That is part of your offer."
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that. Makes a ton of sense. Dave, tell me something. The About platforms, which platforms should the content that's been created, do you help your clients decide which platform, and if so, why those platforms? What process do you go through to decide that?
Yeah. So, in terms of social platforms, typically my client is a business coach, consultant, agency owner. So, ideally, their ideal client is on LinkedIn. So, largely it's LinkedIn.
Okay.
Sometimes that bleeds over into things like Instagram or TikTok, but largely we're focusing on one platform early on, especially if they don't have any social media presence.
Okay.
Because as I'd like to say, is you need to first dominate one before you try to take over the world of all social platforms.
Yeah.
They all have their unique vibes and settings and just personalities within it. So let's focus on one. And in terms of platforms, in terms of like marketing initiatives, like a newsletter or a podcast and all that, depending on where my client is in their digital marketing journey,
Okay.
we're typically just starting with social and a YouTube channel so we can get that long form video content
Nice.
and guest podcasting, which luckily for them, they don't really have to do anything. They just have to show
Right.
up, demonstrate their expertise, and then someone else handles the actual execution of that. But
Mm.
yeah, long form video content is what I'm preaching for, and that starts with YouTube, and then YouTube has short form content and such you can repurpose onto. But um, definitely, eventually getting into newsletters, and all of these things kind of just work hand in hand because as you're crafting your details for a newsletter, that can then be repurposed into essentially an outline of a YouTube video. So, just kind of keeping people, getting people into your web, into your email list, but also giving them some face time on YouTube. There's a big concept right now called time on content, which is essentially the more people consume your content, the more they're going to be attracted and convinced into opting into your offer. So there was a study done by Google which said your client or your ideal audience needs to spend 7 hours with you
Okay.
across four different channels, I believe. And so if you think, all right, they need to spend 7 hours with me before they want to opt into my solution, and you're posting 30-second reels, how many 30-second reels do they have to consume before
Right.
they reach that
Right.
7 hours? So that's why I say social is great for attraction and awareness, but then
Uh-huh.
you want to move them into a longer form piece like YouTube, which is maybe a 45-minute, hour long solo episode, or guest podcasting where you're spending maybe 45 minutes with you and a host.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So you're saying do the shorts, do the reels, do the short things, and lead them to some kind of long form content, whether that's video or newsletter or some kind of long email, for them to expect. We're talking about 7 hours. So 7 hours, it's got to be long form video on YouTube.
Hmm. Exactly.
In
Or
right,
guest podcasting and
podcast.
repurposing that content.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that YouTube is a long form platform.
Yeah,
So far, it's the dominant one,
right.
and the discoverability on there, the binge worthiness of things. It's very easy to just go right into the next post. That's the strategy. And again, YouTube is becoming actually one of the most streamed services on TV now
Yeah,
because smart TVs, there's a YouTube app. And I know for myself, I sit down, I have the smart TV with the YouTube app on it in my living room. And when I go down and I'll have dinner, I'll pop on YouTube, I'll pop on a podcast, I'll pop on someone in the business space that I respect, and I watch
right.
their latest, sometimes over an hour long video
Yeah,
of them demonstrating their knowledge. And through that, it's like I'm binging something on Netflix, but instead I'm binging their content. In the same way you binge a series on Netflix and afterwards you feel emotionally connected to it.
right.
It's the same way with your favorite creator or your favorite coach, consultant, agency owner. You just got to again show up authentically and not try to push anything down their throats. Just add value, and eventually they persuade themselves.
Absolutely. I'm going to say something. It might not be what you do, it might be a therapist, but what about the person who understands what you said, makes sense? Dave said, do short form, do long form video, be on YouTube, and but they do not want to show their face at all. Is there any hope for that person in terms of the people you work with, or is there an alternative way?
I would say if it helps you get from 0 to 1, you can start with faceless content just because you're starting the practice and you're getting the confidence.
Mm,
It's like if you want to become a runner and you don't want to get out there, or you want to go to the gym and get fit, but you're scared to go to the gym because you don't want to look like a scrawny person in front of
right.
all these big buff people, right?
Uh,
All right, do some home workouts first and then work your way up to the gym or something, right? If that's completely necessary. But I will say the immediate goal is you need to get face time with your audience. There is a connection there. Just as human beings across the world, we connect with faces.
mm,
Just naturally, we are designed to see faces in everything. It is just how we connect with people. It's how that human connection. And there's an element of being able to see someone's passion, someone's quirks, someone's just ability to deliver, especially if you're going to be a coach or consultant who's going to be taking Zoom calls
true.
with that person. It's
Mm,
critical that you demonstrate to the person early on how that interaction is going to go. So if you're going to be on YouTube videos and demonstrating something for someone, and that's what is going to be your offer on the back end, then it's critical that you demonstrate what your or trial essentially what your offer is going to be through a YouTube video. And if you're going to get on a Zoom call and not put on your camera when you're talking to a client, um, if that's how you interact with your clients, then sure. But
Yeah.
otherwise, if you're interacting with your clients with a video call, then you should be showing your face on YouTube as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Listen, Dave, for how is artificial intelligence affecting or changing the landscape of content creation and personal branding?
Yeah, great question. And here's what I'll say. On one hand, AI is helping streamline processes. So the time that it would take to have to like comb through a long form piece of content that maybe you've created and then find the nuggets that you want to spin off into other forms of content. AI has just decreased that from 30 minutes down to 10 seconds.
Wow.
And that's not necessarily a negative thing in terms of like, oh, well, you're not a real personal brand at that case. No, it's as if you were to have hired an editor to do that for you, which many people do.
Mm,
Um, Except this is just a machine that's doing it.
mm.
Then the other side of it is content creation, actual uh, generative AI who that would be creating content for you on your behalf. And that's a little bit more of a gray area because, again, many people on LinkedIn hire ghostwriters.
Right,
They work with an individual, a human, and say, here is my ideal client, here's what I can provide, yada, yada. And then the ghostwriter writes their post and publishes it for them, right?
right, right.
While AI is just the technical version of a ghostwriter.
True.
The
Right,
key here, though, is if you're going to use AI to generate content for you, it needs to be given one, your brand voice. That is critical. It needs to look and sound like you. If you were to have written that post, you wouldn't have changed anything, right? The words used, all that stuff. And two, it needs to be your thoughts and opinions.
right.
So you need to feed the AI both
Mm,
of those things so that it's not creating a piece of content out of thin air based on what other people believe and all that. It's your voice, your opinions, everything. It's just AI is helping you format it in a way that will play best with your audience. And that's just like hiring an editor. But AI is just doing it for you faster and cheaper. So that's my opinions on how AI should be used in
exciting,
content.
exciting times. Thanks for that, Dave. Dave, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. For those who want to learn more from you or learn more about your agency or how you can support them, help them, what's the best way for those people to connect with you?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, check me out on LinkedIn. That's my main channel, as I mentioned. That's Dave Polykoff. And then, lastly, as I mentioned today, I am a guest on a podcast show today. This lovely podcast show. Told my story that hopefully was memorable. Told some unique methods, and now I'm giving a call to action here, which is what I preach everyone who has a personal brand should be out there doing, getting on guest podcasts, telling their story, their unique methods, and then driving a call to action back to a personal brand sales funnel. And I know that can be confusing and difficult to figure out. And it can be confusing and difficult to understand how to best do it on a show, which is why I created a guest podcast mastery blueprint course, which walks you through all of those details of how to do it A through Z, step by step. And so you can find that at davepoly.com/podcast blueprint. There'll be a link, I'm sure, in the show
Yeah,
notes
we'll add it.
below.
Yeah, we'll add it to
But
show.
yeah,
Fantastic. You're a person who says as it is. You're doing it as well as preaching it, and you've just demonstrated exactly how to do long form content. And you said, look, and so for those of you who heard what he said, check him out. Grab the guide, follow the guide, and so you can start doing this as well. So, Dave, I want to say thank you so much for jumping on. For all our listeners. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, depending on which platform you are on. Give some emojis, make some comments. Tell us what you got out of this as well, and any questions you have for Dave as well. Dave, again, thank you so much, so much. Really appreciate it.
absolutely, Mac. Thank you for having me on.
You're most welcome. Until we speak again.